So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a Brilliant Businesses podcast. My name's Nick Bryant, and I'm very privileged to be back in the Loch Associates offices today, and I'm with Pam Loch. Hi, Pam.
Hi there.
Good to see you again. So today, the topic we're going to talk about is managing bereavement in the workplace. There's a lot of topics around that which we're going to go through, but let's start it off, Pam. Let's start the discussion about that.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about it because I think a lot of people don't talk about bereavement.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the recent events involving the loss of the Queen, I think it's led to a lot more people talking about, actually, let's talk about things like that in the workplace.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is important because obviously it is likely to affect all of us. And quite often it, unfortunately, is somebody who's quite close. And quite a lot of people don't realise that actually the law has changed recently.
Okay.
So what's been introduced is a right to have some reasonable time off to deal with the bereavement of a dependent usually. So it's somebody quite close to you, obviously, or somebody that's dependent on you.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's important that employers are aware of that because they have, I'd like to think that most employers accommodate, somebody's request or are immediately introducing, compassionate leave. But actually, it's amazing how many employers might not have a policy in place and sometimes deal with it in a pretty clumsy way because they're just not sure how to deal with it. So, first of all, they have to be aware of the right to reasonable time off.
Yeah.
But also, what's even better is having a policy in place. So you've got a bereavement policy, and that's certainly something the law would encourage you to do.
Yeah.
But also thinking about whether there's other forms of compassionate leave that you want to cover off, because most employees tend to look at handbooks nowadays, look to see what your policy is, and actually makes your life easier as well.
Yeah.
Because then you're not having to get questions about it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm sure they don't do it intentionally, but they're probably just a bit confused and not really sure the right thing to say or to do or to how to approach it the right way. So that solves those problems, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think that's just a general thing you find with some managers. Having these difficult conversations, they're not quite sure how to approach it. So we offer a nip it in the bud training course, which is designed to try and help managers have the skills to be able to have those conversations and not run away from it. And because the other thing is people get confused, as you say. If somebody's not wanting to engage with you about it or they're trying to avoid the topic, it then introduces this sort of paranoia about why they're not sort of talking to me about it. So it can be a sort of it can work against you by not actually talking to people. But I can understand why you might be reluctant to engage in the conversation.
Yeah, the nervousness of it. So what are the rules? I mean, should we go through them? I mean, every case is different, I guess.
Well, that's the thing, unfortunately. I mean, we do have this right to what they call reasonable time off for dependents. So you could decide whether you want to pay for that or not, but at the moment it's not a right to be paid for it. But it does mean that you've got to determine what is reasonable, and of course that means it's back into the court of the employer to decide. So I mean most businesses will have policies if they've got a policy on bereavement or compassionate leave, and they'll usually allow about 5 days off if it's a close relation, so a husband or a wife or a child. But, I've had situations where I had an employer allowed somebody to be off for over a year. Wow. Paid leave. Okay. Now, that's not necessarily the right thing to do because actually some people need to get back into a routine. And actually sometimes it's better. So in that scenario, they actually didn't engage with them at all and just left them. Right. And actually that's not a good idea because actually that can create an isolation and a distance and cause more problems. But of course, if you've got somebody who loses a partner or a close member of their family, they might also be quite unwell because they might suffer from what's called reactive depression, right, or possibly some other form of anxiety. So it may well be that you might have someone who has time off because you've allowed them time off, but they might actually need more time off because they're not well. So again, it's managing that effectively, talking to the person, trying to see what support you can put in place. I mean, quite a lot of employers now have employee assistance programs, right, which are very cost effective. They don't cost a lot. We encourage our clients to speak to us about putting them in place because they are really critical at these times, because what it offers is a free counselling service to help someone that's having difficulty, when they've lost a close one. Okay, yeah. What you were saying earlier is a lot of employers actually also presume that they won't want to come back to work, which is the wrong thing to presume because people want to continue with their lives, don't they? Absolutely. But you hit it on the nail on the head. It's all of a case-by-case basis because we're all different in the ways we approach bereavement. I mean, I know when I lost my mum, and that was 15 years ago, my reaction was very different to other members of the family.
Right.
Because, even within a family, you don't all react the same way.
Yeah.
So I think as an employer, you need to talk, and that's why it's important that you've got managers that are able to discuss these sort of subjects with their staff, so that they can understand what they're looking for, but also you can then manage workloads and understand how long somebody might need off.
Yeah.
Backing off and not talking about it actually is not the right thing.
Yeah.
It's having the ability to be in tune and understand, be sensitive to the issues that are surrounding the person.
Yeah, it's topical, but it's something that's always topical, isn't it? It's always got to be something on employers' minds, and how to get that correct and get that the right way. Have you? You said you did a webinar. Have you done a webinar on this topic earlier this week, or?
Well, this week, no. We were talking about hybrid working, because that's still a problem.
Okay.
And how do people, manage remote working now, and the challenges that it presents, because we've now got this combination now with some people are working more at home, other people are going into the office, some of them going in full time. How do we deal with that? And you've got this home working shaming that's going on in some places, where people in the office are sort of thinking people at home are slacking.
Yeah.
And, so there's a lot of different. It's interesting. Obviously, we had COVID. Whoever could work from home worked from home, so everyone was in the same situation. We're now in a different scenario, and we have lots of things that are bubbling around, like how do you pay for somebody coming into the office if have they got two places of work, because that may mean that they can't get paid expenses for travelling to the office even if they work at home. So there's a lot of different elements now that are coming into play that really have just come as a result of the change in dynamics in the workplace.
And every contract's got to be different, isn't it? Because everyone's need is different, and everyone's working.
And I mean, again,
restraints.
It all comes back down to communication.
Yeah.
You've got to talk to your staff. And I mean, there are some employees that are resistant to going back to work in the office.
Okay.
Now, you might be obliged to allow somebody to work from home if they've got a disability, and it's a reasonable adjustment to work from home, because that's what you're legally obliged to do if somebody's got a disability. So first of all, it's ascertaining, are we dealing with somebody that's got a disability? What do they want to do? What would help them, be able to continue doing their work? And that might well be working from home.
Yeah.
But then there's other people that are just resistant because they either quite like working at home, or they don't want to be working with other people. I mean, we certainly come across that. It's just really they're antisocial.
Yeah.
It's not because they've got any other issue.
Yeah.
And that might well work for the organisation, but if it doesn't, it's then how do you manage that? And that's the challenges that we're now facing.
I expect some people say by going back into the office they become less productive than they were when they were working from home and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. That's one argument that's getting put forward. And of course now with the energy prices and the challenges that are facing us with cost increases, quite a lot of employees are now thinking, right, actually, is it more cost effective for me to travel to the office, work in the office rather than put my heating on all day?
Yeah, right.
And then you've also got employees that are saying, well, actually, if I'm working from home and my energy prices have increased, then you need to pay for my energy costs that have increased. And that's now introducing a whole new dimension to this, because obviously it doesn't necessarily follow because you're working from home that your employer has to pay, but they may have to.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back down to the law. So I think employment lawyers are going to be busy.
Yeah, definitely.
Trying to sort of work our way through these things.
Yeah.
And, obviously the energy crisis affects the businesses as well. So, there's not necessarily, the wherewithal within their funds to be able to sort of finance all of this. So, it's a worrying winter ahead, but in a number of different ways.
It's a minefield, isn't it, of all the different pros and cons for the employers. We could go through loads of them, but I'm sure there's a way through it all for all of them, and I'm sure you can sort that out for them.
We can certainly help. And I think, again, it's talking to your employees, making sure you understand, but also letting them understand, at the end of the day, it's a relationship that needs to work.
Yeah.
Because if one person's unhappy, it isn't going to work. So it's trying to get to that situation. Some of it may involve a bit of compromise. Yeah. But sometimes it's just about talking through the issues. So, I keep on coming back to communication. Is absolutely critical. Yeah.
Which is where your HR side comes in as well, as well as the legal side.
Yeah. I mean, we find is we've got, businesses where actually, the people that are running the business are brilliant at running the business, but actually they need the HR specialist to actually come in and talk to their staff, do staff engagement surveys, understand how their staff are feeling, manage situations, have those difficult conversations. And they're brilliant at that. That's what they do. That's their day job. So let them do that for you, and you just crack on with running your business and you know, generating income and you know, growing it as best you can.
Doing what they do best, and
Absolutely.
outsourcing to the professionals, of course, which is the right way to go. I think they're really topical things at the moment. Aren't they? Both of those things, managing bereavement and also the hybrid working. So if anyone's got any questions about that, then obviously they can talk to Pam, and I'm sure you'll be able to help them. What else has been going on in the week, Pam? What's been taking up your time recently?
What's been taking up my time? Well, unfortunately, redundancies.
Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing quite a lot. We're seeing quite a lot of businesses that are now, obviously, because of, you know, they're looking at the pricing and the costs, and they're thinking, right, actually, what does the future hold? So yeah, there's quite a few businesses are sort of looking ahead and thinking, right, actually, how do we structure the business that's fit for purpose moving forward? So not necessarily massive redundancies, but maybe some smaller scale sort of restructuring, so that they're in the right shape. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that I've been talking about is, unfortunately, another topic that's not a particularly happy one, but it's going to affect 1 in 2 of us, which is cancer. Because one of the things that's become apparent is the good thing is we have a large number of people that could be diagnosed early and actually survive cancer. So, you know, but we still got a group of people that unfortunately may not have been diagnosed early enough, partly because of COVID and unfortunately not being able to get appointments, etc. And some of them are not going to survive. And that's a challenge for employers, you know, and on a personal level, I'm going through that, you know, with some family members and colleagues myself. And I think it's really important to talk about it as well, because actually that's another subject that we run away from. And it's important because legally, again, cancer is deemed to be a disability. So you do then have these obligations to make reasonable adjustments. It's also important not to make assumptions, because a lot of people think that if you get cancer, that's it, you can't work. Well, of course, that's not true.
Absolutely.
You know, there are many people with cancer that want to continue working, and actually it's really good for them to continue working for their own positive mindset and well-being. But equally, if they can't work, it's how do you deal with the situation? And the other thing is it's not just the person that's got cancer that you need to think about. You know, you've got employees who are possibly team colleagues that actually may be affected, so how do you manage that? But also, you might have people that is partners, and it's their, you know, they're affected by it as well. So it's quite, I think it's a challenging time for employers, because I think there's a lot of things coming at them, and it's thinking about actually being more open about these things, and how do you have, you know, a process in place for people to feel like they can talk about it. And also making sure staff and your managers are aware, because picking up vibes when somebody's struggling, needs a bit more time off, because actually maybe they came back to work too early after maybe some chemo, or maybe the chemo's affected them in a way, but also understanding how it affects other people, not those that are suffering from cancer, but actually affected by it.
Goes back to what you said before, isn't it? It's communication, big time. But also a point you made earlier is some employers are great at being an employer and great at what the profession they do, but they're not great at doing what the things you were just saying, as in, you know, bringing someone to the office, sitting them down and saying, how are you feeling? Can I help you with that? Which means that's a service that you offer, you know, putting someone in that, almost like a mediator for them. Yeah, well, we do. It's. I mean, I think I think one of the things that we did really well during COVID was we probably learned to do more check-ins and what we call welfare check-ins. Okay. That sort of dropped away. That's actually what we need to do. And I think sometimes managers are too busy to do that. And actually maybe they're not the right people to do it. So we've got staff, you know, HR consultants who are trained. Some of them have got a medical background as well. They can have those conversations, those check-ins, just to make sure everybody's doing all right. Particularly if they're working at home and you don't see them all the time. But yeah, we've got a service where we can actually step into the shoes of the employer and actually have that conversation. And people open up because they actually, first of all, sometimes you don't want to talk to your manager. It's impartial a bit, isn't it? Yeah. It's a sort of, feels like it's a third party you can just talk to. And also then they know the sort of, you know, quite a few of them are mental health first aid trained as well, so they can signpost and send people to the right place, but they can also reassure them.
sometimes people just want to offload.
Oh yeah, right. Just need someone to listen to them.
Just want to share, and sometimes actually maybe it's not the right thing to share with your manager.
Yeah, true.
You know, but I think it's important to think about, actually, as I said to you earlier, what are you best at doing?
Yeah.
Focus your attention on that, and don't try and sort of maybe dabble in something, because actually you could cause more damage by doing that. Let us take over and step in and help you.
If they deal with the wrong emotions, it could have the opposite effect, couldn't it?
Yeah.
They're great topics, Pam. So thank you again. All of those things, it's great to talk about, and once again, another good podcast. But if anyone needs to talk to Pam about these things, or anyone at Loch Associates, then all the details are on this podcast, and we'll see you for another podcast soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Cheers, Pam.